welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to talk about narcissism today. A few people on my Instagram wanted to see me cover a video on narcissism, and the term is so bandied around at the moment and so popular that I thought I would cover it in a video. So that's today's video. If you like my videos, please don't forget to give them a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps with what I want to do on YouTube, so that'll be great, but no pressure either way, like totally up to you. So I'm going to go to the Google definition of narcissism. This could be a fundamental error. We both know that Google is not it's not the best academic source, but it'll give you an idea on the kind of definition of narcissism. So, narcissism is the pursuit of gratification from vanity or egotistic admiration of one's idealized self-image and attributes. The term originated from Greek mythology. A young man named Narcissus fell in love with his own image reflected in a pool of water. So basically, if we look at that definition, it's the love of the idealized self, narcissism. So you have a construction, usually narcissism is very egotistic, but you have a construction of yourself that you are in love with. And it's so strong to the point where you can't really see past that. And there's lots and lots and lots of behaviours that then come from narcissism that can affect the people around you. The reason why I wanted to discuss it in this video is because it seems to me like at the moment lots of people are using the term, oh, that person was a narcissist, usually about an ex-partner, and it's becoming a very generalized term. And I can see that as being kind of problematic a little bit, so I wanted to cover it a bit. So with narcissists, there's a complete and utter inability to really understand empathy or to empathize with other people or to understand other people's situations and what's going on. And because it is so caught up in the self, in this image of the self as a very idealized self. So narcissists will always be right. There's no question that they'd ever not be right. And from a psychological point of view, you have to look into the development of the narcissism and where that comes from. A lot of the time, narcissism has its roots in self-esteem issues. So even though it's someone who can never be wrong, ever, they're always right, and they really cannot see anyone else's point of view, a lot of that comes from being deeply, deeply insecure. So if you are in love with an idealized self, the likelihood is that they have this image of themselves that they actually know that they aren't. So they're almost in love with the person that they think they could be, and they have no awareness of the person that they actually are. Often narcissism as well can be linked to abuse situations, because really common behaviours, because of the lack of empathy, can be things like being controlling over finances, being controlling over friendships, being controlling generally over someone else. And that's to do with a full lack of trust in somebody else, and that need to be controlling as a need to kind of reassert themselves. And again, self-esteem stuff comes into that. With no awareness of what they're doing, there can be a real tendency to gaslight their romantic partners, their people that they're with. And there can also be a lot of misunderstanding within a narcissist that they think that they're doing things for the right reasons. You know, they think that they're absolutely right in what they're doing and that they know their own intentions behind that. So for example, if they are controlling over someone, it's because they need that, and because there is an excessive need for admiration, which is also tied with issues with relating to people because they don't feel empathy. So there is a real fear that people will leave them and abandon them, because there is also this understanding that it is an idealized self. So they know that they're not that person, it's just a projection. And that can lead them to often feeling empty and bored with life, and also really unable to create relationships that are based on connection and trust and attachment properly. So then their relationships are very superficial, and they tend to be built on, you know, more kind of controlling behaviours, and well, if you love me, you do this, and it is manipulative. But the narcissist can't see that it is that way. They just think, well, that's that is a relationship, and that's what it should be. And there's lots of stereotyping of roles that happen with narcissism as well. So the narcissist as well also tends to need that control over things, to be able to predict life a bit better, and they can struggle during periods of transition because they feel out of control. And there is definitely that need to almost reassert themselves through control that they assert on other people. And yeah, things like I said, like gaslighting and stuff is really common. Now, if you look at all these different traits in isolation, you can clearly see that yes, it's incredibly problematic in terms of forming relationships with people, but also what's happening at the moment, I see it a lot on social media, is this kind of branding people as a narcissist. And it's so negative. It's so like, well, that person's a narcissist and they're an arse. But ultimately, if you look at all of these traits that this person is showing, an alternative viewpoint on it would be that this person doesn't know love. Like, they don't know love. They don't know empathy with other people. They have no means of connecting with other people. Now, the root of narcissism is very likely going to be somehow related to attachment theory. There'll be roots in how they were brought up, in their close relationships when they were children, and how they formed those bonds and what they were built on. And the need of a narcissist to have constant admiration and constant reassurance from other people just shows how little their own sense of self and their own sense of self-worth and their own sense of self-esteem is. So actually, all of these behaviours that a narcissist shows are largely defensive mechanisms, because there is such a level of disruption within the self of a narcissist, and they are so beyond the point where they could even recognise it. It's a coping mechanism for usually crippling self-esteem issues, crippling attachment issues, crippling mental health issues, where without any kind of support, because they can't possibly seek support, because a narcissist would not be able to recognise these issues, to be able to seek support. So, you know, a narcissist doesn't sit in front of a counsellor and say, I think I might be a narcissist. If you're saying you think you might be a narcissist, you're not a narcissist, because you're too self-aware to possibly be a narcissist. There is zero self-awareness. So because a narcissist is always right, they will constantly blame everybody else outside of themselves for the issues that they have in their life, and they will never get to a point where they could possibly self-reflect without some serious changes going on. And to this point, I don't think I've ever seen a narcissist in my professional life. I don't think I've sat opposite a kind of aware narcissist. I don't think I've heard of anybody who's sat opposite an aware narcissist. Like, if you start to become aware of some issues and behaviour wise, you're probably not the narcissist. So really, from an outsider's point of view, with all this negativity being shoved on the term narcissist, from my point of view, I just think it's really, really sad. Because although, yes, these behaviours are what we would deem unacceptable, you know, they are crippling for people. They can be very, very abusive behaviours that can be shown to other people. Usually they stem from such a low point of self-worth that I personally just end up feeling really sorry for narcissists, because I just wonder what happened to get them to that point. And I just feel more and more that the fact that there is a lack of support for parents, there is a lack of support for children, there is such lack of mental health support for people, that ultimately these kind of issues that usually come from attachment theory are from children not being seen, not being heard, and not having value in themselves. You know, a narcissist is not self-fulfilling. Although they're loving themselves, they need attention, they need admiration, they need someone to control, they need security, they need so many other things from other people. They're not self-actualizing within themselves, they're not validating themselves. And don't get me wrong, to be caught up in narcissistic behavior when you love someone and they're a narcissist and they're treating you this way, it can be such a tangled, difficult web to work out. But I just think that the current almost blindsiding that everyone who's a narcissist is an ass and is horrendous, and this really negatively labeling of narcissism actually stops the potential for the possibility of someone being able to either grow themselves, having come out of that situation. So if you have been in a relationship with a narcissist, for example, if you just go, well, they're a narcissist and that's how it is, actually that limits your ability to grow through that healing process. There's a temptation to label someone a narcissist and then hold on to a load of anger and judgment around that person. And that only will fester in you. It doesn't affect the person that you're not with anymore. So that labeling is problematic in that way. And it's also problematic if somebody who is a narcissist, not that I've met one yet, who would be self-reflective enough, but with stigma coming up around it, you know, turning around and sitting in front of a counsellor and going, I think I may have showed some narcissistic behaviours. That must be really, really hard right now because of the amount of negative stigma that there is around the term. Yeah, I just thought today I would talk about narcissism, talk about how it's not as clear-cut as people are making out. There's a lot of grey as usual with mental health. And although in some ways there are kind of support groups now where people who have come out of relationships with narcissists, for example, will now support each other through that because they can understand, oh yeah, I was with a narcissist and you were with a narcissist, and we can have that bonding and healing through that joint thing that we have shared. However, those two people, although they may both be narcissists, are different people, so it still would be different experiences for those people. And I am in no way diminishing the incredibly negative effects that being around those types of people can have, but I just think that it also brings with it a lot of guilt, because it's almost like, oh, I allowed myself to get into that relationship with that narcissist, and then it brings in lots of self-evaluation and usually to the negative. So that's something to be very mindful of as well. But anyway, that's me rambling about narcissism. I'm not sure if that may have been useful. If it has, please leave me a comment down below, give this video a like, and if you would subscribe to my channel, that would be awesome, but obviously no pressure. And I hope wherever you are, you're keeping safe and well, and I will catch you in the next video.